There's a lot of photographers like myself that do both photography and podcasting, but there's very few working commercial and portrait photographers that do a podcast, also run an entire website on photography-related applications, and do a daily YouTube show having to do with photography. But today's guest, he does just that, and we'll be discussing his image, The Bread Baker of Tbilisi, on this episode of Behind the Shot. And welcome again to another episode of Behind the Shot. I'm your host, Steve Brazel, and this is the show where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers. We try and go behind their mind a little bit, behind their shot, as it were, and try and figure out how they work a job, how they work a shoot, from conception to completion, and all the challenges and stories that might happen in between. We take one shot, we dissect it a little bit. As always, if you drop by the Google Play Store, if you drop by iTunes and drop us a review, I would appreciate that very much. Whatever it is, just be honest. I'm okay with that. So today's guest is somebody that's a little bit special. I've known about this guy for years and years, and I had the privilege of meeting him a few years ago through a mutual friend of TWiP fame, Frederick Van Johnson. This gentleman is amazing in the sense that I don't think he actually sleeps. He is a working photographer, and yet also is a content creator on the internet like very few people, including a daily show on YouTube. It's the infamous PhotoJoseph. Joseph, thanks for joining me, man.
Steve, thank you very much for having me on.
I appreciate your being here, and I want to touch on you just a little bit here. First of all, it's PhotoJoseph, but your real name, Joseph. I started to say PhotoJoseph is your real name.
that could be.
And that's your real name. We're going to go with it.
I've been working hard to get there.
Yeah. I mean, I could see your parents yelling at the door, PhotoJoseph, dinner.
Pretty much.
Joseph Linaschke is your real name.
Is.
Joseph is an Oregon-based photographer, commercial portrait photographer, educator, the creator of PhotoApps.Expert, which
Correct.
is a great website. You got to go there for all your learning stuff. You're known as PhotoJoseph. How did that come about?
We can actually blame our mutual friend, Frederick Van Johnson, that you already mentioned. He's getting 2 shout outs in 2 minutes here. It's all his fault. I had josephlinashke.com, still have it. That's my name. That's my website. And, you know how hard it is to get somebody to type in josephlinashke.com and actually spell it right?
I know how to spell your name,
and
I misspelled it as I was typing notes.
It's my name and I misspell it. So it's pretty tough, right? It can be. So anyway, so one time I'm talking with him on the phone or video chat, whatever, and he goes, you got to do something about this name. And we start poking around and he finds that PhotoJoseph.com is available. And so I registered it right away and sat on that for a little bit. And then as I started to really kind of come to enjoy it and own that and go, it's a little bit cheesy. There's a little cheese to it, but I'm going to own it. And I just started rolling everything over to that. So I ended up with the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, everything for PhotoJoseph. And it took a long time because things I already had. I already had Twitter. I didn't want to throw away all my followers. And the PhotoJoseph name was already being used, but it was a dead account. So I had to petition Twitter, and it took years before they released it. You can do that. If you have an account, if you find an account that is dormant, technically if it's over, I don't remember now, 2, maybe 3 years unused, Twitter will release it. But you have to petition them for it. And it takes a long time, and it took years. But I finally got it. And I had already had Instagram saved, but I wasn't using it because it was I wanted a name that matched my Twitter name, which used to be Travel Junkie. So I had that. And so I was able to switch that one over. Once I got the Twitter, I switched over to the Instagram and started rolling everything else over to it. And the final piece of the puzzle came in. It was either beginning of this year, maybe it was the end of last year. I got YouTube, to change my name officially on YouTube to PhotoJoseph.
Which, as I was looking up links for you, I actually found a link for Joseph Linaschke on YouTube. But then when you sent him to me, it was PhotoJoseph. I'm like, I must have found the wrong one. I'm not quite sure. And sure enough, yeah, it's PhotoJoseph. You as a photographer, I mentioned you are a working commercial portrait photographer, along with all the content that you create. But some of your clients are, bucket list items. Apple, Mercedes-Benz, Panasonic, the singer, the artist Seal, U.S. Army Reserves. I mean, you've got a resume behind you that's insane. And along with shooting those types of really large commercial clients, you've created a ton of content. So you have PhotoApps, the podcast.
Correct.
You have PhotoApps.Expert. Explain to me what that is.
So that actually started off as Aperture Expert for those who they're still lamenting the demise of Aperture from Apple. My history goes back to Apple. I used to work at Apple. Aperture was one of the products I was primarily focused on there. And when I left Apple in 2009, I launched a website called Aperture.Expert, and it was all about Aperture. Obviously, it was a support place for Aperture users, tips and tricks. That's
actually where I first heard of you from.
Oh, okay. All right, so that goes back quite a way. That was 2009, maybe 2010 when I launched that. And when Aperture died, I had to figure out what to do with the site because it was obviously having it as Aperture.Expert was no longer valid. And it took a little while there. It went through a couple transitions, but what finally came out the other end was PhotoApps.Expert. So it's a site that is dedicated to all photo apps, and that can be apps on iOS, on Android, on macOS, on Windows, doesn't matter. If it's a photo-based app, photo-related app, then it's fair game on the show.
And let's be clear, it's not PhotoApps.Expert.com.
Correct.
Don't do the .com. It's .Expert, end of story.
Yeah, .Expert's a TLD that a lot of people don't realize is there, but you can get a...
Yeah, and actually, some of the new custom, top-level domains that they're coming out with are really, really nice. The website that I'm going to refer people to at the end is a .info, which I like because the way you're using it to me is exactly how it should be used.
Right.
Along with being a photographer and content creator, podcaster with the PhotoApps.Expert and PhotoApps podcast, you are an educator. You do talks and lectures and presentations. You lead various workshops. Mm-hmm. You've got some coming up. We'll talk about. It's in the blog post. All the links for Joseph are in the blog post, but we'll talk about them at the end of the podcast as well. You're a lynda.com instructor.
Correct.
And you are a Panasonic instructor. You've got a whole website we'll talk about on that too. So you kind of do a little bit about everything, but one thing I wanted to touch on before we get into your photograph here is your YouTube series. Explain your YouTube series to people because I've watched it, and like your 3-episode series on how you built your studio, forget photography at that point. Every podcaster should watch that 3 series. I'm serious. From lighting to sound to set design to everything is in there, and yet it's also still photo related. Explain your show.
Sure. So the show is PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment. Fortuitously, today marks the 1-year anniversary of the show. We just did a 1-year anniversary recording this morning. And it is as you said, it's a live show. It's every weekday, so Monday through Friday or every working day. I take holidays off like normal people. And we go live at 9:30 a.m. Pacific at youtube.com/PhotoJoseph. And the whole idea of the show is to talk about anything photography related. I tend to avoid software because I have the whole PhotoApps.Expert site for software. So this is a chance to talk about hardware, tips and techniques, theories, just whatever, if it's photography related. And it's not just still photography. When I say photography or photo, I'm talking photo and video. It's all pictures, still pictures, moving pictures. As I said on another show recently, if it passes through a camera lens, I'll talk about it. If it has anything to do with cameras or photography or image making, fair game.
So let's be clear then, because you are obviously a strong Panasonic user.
Right.
But it's Nikon, if you prefer.
I don't
Canon,
actually.
Panasonic,
No, because
DJI, Osmos, whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't, because I'm sponsored by Panasonic. I'm a Lumix luminary. So that is the one area that I don't go out of that zone of cameras. I only talk about Panasonic cameras, and it's very clear. I make it very clear up front all the time. I'm sponsored by Panasonic. I'm not doing independent reviews. If I talk about the GH5, which has been a huge topic lately, I'm not giving a review on it. If I find something that I think is less than ideal, if there's a workaround, I say, okay, maybe I wish it would do this better, but we can talk about how to get the best out of it. That's fine. But I'm never going to knock anything. I'm never going to say this is crap because it's I'm sponsored by them, right? That is I am biased. I'm paid biased there. So I make that very clear. It's on the disclaimer in every single video, so people aren't wondering about that.
But at the same time, having watched your show, the knowledge that you put forth, let's put it that way, transcends every brand.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you're discussing general photographic topics, composition, how to use gear, exposure, right. Things that every photographer can benefit from. I'm a Canon shooter and I love your show. So
thank you.
Everybody should go there. Let's get into your shot here a little bit. This shot, when you and I were bouncing back and forth over email going, what shot can we discuss? What's a good story, but what's also a really unique type of shot that most people will never get. This shot came across my email and I went, what the hell is happening here? Explain to me, first of all, as I bring this shot up, this is a baker apparently?
That's right. Bread baker.
Where is this?
Tbilisi, Georgia, Republic of Georgia.
So how did you end up in Tbilisi, Georgia?
Okay. So I was there for a workshop with John Stanmeyer. I was there as a student, not instructing. So many people are familiar with John Stanmeyer. He's got an incredible history of photography. If you go to StanmeyerWorkshops.com, please do go check out what he does. His workshops are phenomenal. And the idea behind his workshop is not a traditional kind of, come here and learn how to push the button, take a picture, set the camera. His workshops are storytelling workshops. Every student there had a different story to tell. Every student there had to come in with their idea pretty well baked. And of course, those ideas evolved as we were on the ground. But we were there as if we were on assignment for National Geographic or something. That was the idea. Treat this like a Nat Geo assignment. You are digging in and telling the story. Every single photographer.
A photojournalism exercise.
Yeah, exactly. Every photographer had a fixer, a local fixer who could translate, show us around, get us into places, open doors for us. And that whole experience was about telling the story of whatever it is your chosen story is. And then you'd work with John every day. Sit down with him, go through your photos, talk about what you're doing, how you're succeeding, where your failures are. He'd look at your pictures and go, "You're on the right track," or "This sucks, go somewhere else. You're not doing what you can," and so on. And it was an incredible experience. I went because I love the idea of doing this. I love the idea of learning from someone like John, who's just a phenomenally accomplished photographer, and to get this different perspective on what you try to do every day. But you never stop learning. You can always get better. And so I took this workshop. This was last summer.
And to be clear, Tbilisi, Georgia is former Soviet Republic, correct?
Right. That's right. Yeah. Borders Russia. Yeah. It's a phenomenal place. And I'd never been there before. It was my first time there. And so my story was the food of Georgia. Because people who follow me on Instagram know I kind of like food. And so I did a whole thing on this story of the food. And that was the idea behind it. And this particular shot was a little bit of happenstance, just right place, right time, and a lot of luck and a lot of having the camera set just right.
Well, what is he doing? What is happening?
Okay, so here's what you're looking at. You know what a tandoori oven is, yeah?
Yeah.
This is basically a huge tandoori oven. It's the same concept. It's electric coils on the bottom. It's not wood fired, but it is a big clay oven that is a bowl-shaped oven. And what he's doing he's slapping bread on the side of the oven, just like a what do you call it? Not a pita, the bread that you make in a tandoori oven. Sorry, forget what that's called.
Right.
But just like that.
Naan bread?
Naan bread, there you go. Thank you. Yeah. Just like naan bread, it's slapped onto the side of the clay oven, and that's where it bakes, and then it's peeled off to be eaten. It's the same thing here. So he's got, and you don't really see, there's one in the back left side you can see on the tabletop there, one piece of dough that's left behind that hasn't gone in yet, and it's a bit oblong shaped. And that oblong shaped bread, kind of like a baguette, except that it's a lot skinnier at the ends, gets slapped onto the inside of the oven. And the bread that comes out, it's always curved. It's got a big curve to it. It's not like a subtle curve. It's got a big curve to it. And that is their traditional way of cooking. And so what he's doing is he's slapping it on there. And he would quite literally rock his head down into the oven to kind of dive in, slap it on the side, and then rely on gravity to rock himself back out again and not go head first into the oven.
I was just going to say, did you walk up to, where he's at, is it hot right there?
Oh, yes. This is underground. So we're walking down the street, and there's this tiny little door, a little stairway going down into this place. And we walk by and hit by the smell of fresh baking bread. So, it's one of those, you walk by a couple steps and you go, oh, excuse me. Let me back up a couple steps. What was that? That smelled kind of awesome. And stuck our heads in there, and it's dark, and stick your head in, can't really see much. Go a couple steps down, stick your head in farther. You're punched in the face by got to be 110, 120 degree heat. It's just insane heat down there.
The whole
and
room.
He's down there doing his thing, and then he pops his head up and goes, "Hey, what's up?" And so my fixer, he didn't speak any English. My fixer was translating and explained what I'm doing and asked if we could come in and take some pictures. And we ended up chatting with him for probably in there for a good half hour or so. And he's just doing his work, and while we're chatting and filling us in on his life story, telling us who he is and how he ended up there and so on. And it was just a phenomenal experience. But this moment was pure happiness. This was at the beginning of it. Kind of walked in just in time to see him doing this, snap this picture, and then shot a bunch more after that. But this is that one fleeting moment, and I never saw this exact moment again.
Was this before or after you talked to him?
Before. This is walking in. We walked in there for seconds, saw this and went click. This is just crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
So there was no setup. No. What did you shoot this with?
This is shot on a Lumix GX85. which is a really small micro four thirds camera. It is the lens it's on. There's a Leica 15mm f1.7 lens, so it is a very fast, very sharp, very high quality lens. And looking at the metadata on there, it was ISO 1600. It probably would have been set to auto ISO. I usually shoot an an aperture priority with auto ISO on when I'm in unpredictable situations like this, which obviously this was. So shot wide open, and ISO 1600. Actually, looks like it was f2 at a 60th of a second.
And what did you do white balance wise?
Well, it would have been auto white balance. I probably fixed this a little bit in post. I think the white balance is probably a little bit funky because you can even tell in the photo, there's two different colored light bulbs in there. So there's two different color temperatures. The one in the back that's blue looks like it was probably a CFL light. And then the one in front, I don't know, probably a standard, what do you call them? Standard incandescent bulb. So Totally mixed lighting temperature. I think I cooled it down a bit. I think I remember the original being a little bit warmer than this.
But I kind of like the fact that you've got the two different colored light bulbs. It's actually, by the way, for f2, and it's got to be because you're at 15 millimeters, there's a lot of depth of field here.
Yeah. So that's a combination of, it's a 15 mil lens, so it's a 30 mil equivalent at full frame. It's f2, but on full frame, equivalent, that's a bit bigger aperture. So yeah, it's not like it's super shallow depth of field, but and especially at this distance, I'm not right up to him. And if I was up close to him, then we'd have more bokeh. But this is, I don't know,
this will kind of help. This will kind of help the people that do street photography, but also the ones that do any event photography that's more photojournalism style. Is you're walking down the street, you end up in this bread baker's place. He's in the oven, and your camera, boom, you need to take a picture. So it was whatever kind of it was set at, pretty much, I'm guessing. Right. So you're at f2, you're in aperture priority. What did you say the shutter was on this?
It was a 60th.
Okay, 60th of a second is what it ended up at in aperture priority. But at the same time, I'm guessing because he's moving in and then coming out, there's motion. What were you doing focus-wise? What was your camera set to focus-wise? Was it in a tracking mode or?
No, so usually something like this, it's autofocus, but single autofocus. And on the Lumix cameras, you can set it so that the touchpad on the back of the camera, the LCD, acts as a trackpad, if you will. So if you look through the viewfinder, you can use your thumb to move your focus point. And it's the fastest way to put your focus point exactly where you want it. So in the process of shooting something like this, and it's not like I remember exactly what I did. It's muscle memory pretty much. But you pick up the camera as it's coming up to your eye, put the thumb on the LCD. I can push that focus point wherever I want. So it comes up to the eye, simultaneously throwing the focus point down towards the bottom of the frame and snap the picture. And the camera's going to focus virtually instantly. And the picture, there you go, you got it. And it's whatever you had it set to, which is why I keep it in aperture priority, keep it on auto ISO. Usually be wide open. The fact that it's at f2 is probably a mistake. It's probably because I bumped the aperture inadvertently from 1.7 to f2. Not that it's that big of a difference, but I usually
would have kept that lens at 1.7.
Yeah.
Would you see any? I mean, I don't shoot that camera with a lens.
See it. No, you wouldn't.
Would you have seen a big depth of field difference at 1.7?
No, not at all.
Not at 15 millimeters.
No.
So you walk in the building because I'm really intrigued by this now. In my head, it was you walked in, you talked to him. And, you prearranged it and, do you mind if Joseph takes some photos? No, go ahead. I'm just going to go on with my work. And you stood there and took some shots. The fact that this was taken as soon as you walked in begs to ask, how the hell did you get this kind of great composition? Were you just lucky that the spot you were standing was the perfect spot to capture him where he is, that table with the single piece of dough left?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you can tell that I'm up a little bit, so that tells me that I was still on the steps coming down into the place. So I was just walking down and saw this and grabbed it. I mean, how it's when it comes to this kind of thing, it's all just, it's muscle memory. This is what you get for shooting.
Well, but you must have done one thing, which is a good lesson for everybody, and that is you were prepared.
Yeah.
You walked in knowing you were going to shoot something, so you didn't have your camera hanging around your neck or on your side. You obviously must have had it in your hand, ready to go.
Yeah, camera is always either in my hand, or if I'm wearing it, it's kind of bandolier sling style, so that I can very quickly just pick it up. And it's the way that I'll wear a camera like this, because it's got a short stubby lens, you don't have to have it with the lens hanging down. It can be sticking straight out. So it's like pulling a gun out of a holster. It's just hand up, grab that camera and go. It's super quick and easy to get to. So it's either that or I was carrying it. Obviously, I don't remember.
So now I'm going to bring up the elephant in the room. Because, and don't answer it yet, but my question is going to relate to, did you add any light? And the reason I'm asking it is, this comes from my image critique in image competitions. you've got two bulbs that I see.
Mm-hmm.
The shadows don't match those bulbs at all.
Well, there's 3 bulbs.
But even there,
I think. Well, actually, that might be
see,
a
I
glare.
thought that the one that bright spot closest to us, past it looks like a pipe across the ceiling.
Yeah, that's probably glare. Okay.
I thought that was glare from the second bulb. But if you look at the shadow of his legs, and more importantly, the table behind his legs, the shadow of that table, those shadows are going back 45 degrees to our right and back. So was there light by you? Did you add light?
Well, I certainly didn't add light.
So there must have been another bulb closer.
There might have been another bulb. There could have been another bulb that'd be kind of more above my head, but since the foreground is so dark, I kind of doubt it. I think it's just that if you look at that first bulb, so like I said, the line that's probably a pipe in the ceiling, and there's the bulb right behind it. So we're going to assume that the light spot in front of that line is a glare, and I think you're right, that probably is. So if you look at that line that's the pipe and you follow that down, that matches, it pretty much lines up with the front of that table, that small 4-legged coffee table looking thing. Not coffee table, but whatever, that small like end table thing. And so that light bulb would be right next to that. So that would make sense that the light is shooting back at a 45-degree angle.
Yeah, actually, I guess it would, because actually, looking at his leg now, if you look at his right leg, the back of his right leg is a hot spot from that light. And that's what so really the light is shining down on him, creating those shadows. But gives the illusion the shadows are going back. Yeah,
it is pretty much straight above him, isn't it? That maybe a little bit off him, but yeah, it's pretty much right above him. Otherwise, the shadow on the side that's facing me, that's all in shadow. So the light is just a little bit past him from where I'm standing.
See, and I jump on that because, and this is something years ago, I think I heard Zach Arias mention it first. When I was first learning composition and things like that, and that is, geometric shapes and triangles. And there's a triangle between the shadow of his leg and his leg. There's a triangle where the shadow of the leg of the table makes. You've got curves in the right spot. You've got gradients in that ceiling that are soft and just really the warmth on the tables, but the coolness on the curtain in the far back. Granted, it's the 2 different light bulbs, but you kept it that way. And a lot of people would have selectively warmed up the back of that shot to match the front, but it makes you feel it adds to the 3D depth of the room and makes you feel more photojournalistic that I'm in that room with this guy. Those are all choices that you made not to fix something. So what did you do in post to this?
I probably should have pulled up the file to see exactly what I did, but I don't think it's cropped. I'm pretty sure this is not cropped at all. And if anything, a little white balance. I don't think there's even any dodging and burning. I might have done a little bit of color tweaking, but like you pointed out, I certainly didn't try to balance out the lights because, like you just said, I like that difference of the 2 different light temperatures in there. I'm pretty sure I did cool it a little bit, the whole scene, just to make the white balance feel a little bit more to what I remember, to what I saw. But that's probably about it. There's not a whole lot done to this image.
You know what's amazing? I'm looking at this as we're sitting here, and the shadow. I mean, effectively a shadow area, right? An unlit area at the front of the oven, our side of the oven, has such detail for being in shadow that it looks like a pebbly type floor. Has such detail through the shadows of his legs. The Panasonic is amazing.
It's a great camera. I really do love it. And that particular one, the GX85, is a really fun little camera because it's so small. It was the first one that they removed the anti-aliasing filter from it. And so you get, even though it's only 16 megapixel, you get a sharper image than you probably normally would. And it's just, I think it's great. I just absolutely love that camera. I love the image quality out of it. Love the colors you get out of it. It's a favorite.
I've never shot micro four thirds. Do you prefer a micro four thirds over a full frame or crop sensor SLR?
I do. So I'll tell you a little story of how I got into there. So I used to be a unabashed full frame snob, right? That's all. I'm shooting less than full frame, please. I'm a real photographer. Real photographer shoot full frame, right? And that was for a long time. I started my first DSLR. So I shot film back, 100 years ago, and I kind of got out of photography for a while, got back into it. When I got back into it, my first digital SLR, first DSLR, was a Canon 20D, which is a crop frame sensor, an APS-C sensor.
1.6, yeah.
Okay, and now, this is great. It's phenomenal. Digital, this is really cool. Having fun with it. And then I was at a photography show, and I was looking at another photographer's images, and there was something different that I couldn't quite put my finger on. What is it about these? There's something better, some quality about this that's just better. I don't get it. What is it? And finally he goes, full frame. I think at the time I honestly didn't even know what he was talking about. I didn't get it. I didn't understand full frame versus APS-C, whatever. So, okay. So then the next camera that I got was the 5D, which was full frame. And then, okay, now I see it. Now I get it. That big sensor was, so that was it. I'm a full frame snob. I don't shoot anything less. And then years and years and years later, a friend of mine who's a bit of a camera collector had shipped me a few cameras to play with. And there was a Leica S2, the big medium format Leica. That was one that I really wanted to play with. He sent me that. He sent me a Fuji something, I don't remember what, and an Olympus OMD, ME5.
Which is a micro four thirds.
Which is a micro four thirds. And of course, I shot with the Leica. That's what I wanted. That's what I was trying to play with. And I shot a little bit with the Fuji, but he only had one really wide lens in there. It really wasn't my focal length, so I didn't get much use out of it. And he goes, did you try the Olympus? I go, no. It's micro four thirds. I'm not going to bother. He goes, dude, try it. Like, come on, man. And he's a camera collector. He's a camera snob. This guy he can shoot anything he wants. He's got the money to shoot whatever he wants.
He owned a Leica medium format.
Right, which he was willing to put in a box and FedEx to me. So yeah. So he goes, dude, you got to try it. Fine. So I just get it out one night, start playing with it. And I think I was just on my couch, just playing around. Focus, boom, nailed instantly every time. Low light performance, really good. The image, the JPEG coming out of the camera looked really good. I'm going, man, this camera's focusing way faster than my Canons, first of all, especially in low light. This camera's fun. So I shot with it more and more, and I ended up buying one for myself, and then I started buying a couple lenses, the Olympus, and then I bought a couple lenses, and my eventual transition over to Panasonic was because I found that the lenses that I was buying more Panasonic than Olympus lenses, and so then the next body became a Panasonic body, and it just evolved into that. But once I started shooting micro four thirds, and I realized obviously there are differences and there are advantages to full frame as there are advantages to the smaller micro four thirds. I love mirrorless. I love the size and the weight of the camera compared to a full frame camera. I pick up my Canon 5D. I still have them sitting upstairs in a box. I got a Canon 5D Mark II. I've got a 1DS Mark III. These things are monsters, absolute monster cameras. And I pick them up and go, my God, my wrist would hurt. My wrist used to hurt shooting these things all day long. Now I can pack a body, even two bodies, 2 or 3 lenses into a tiny little shoulder bag. The image quality that I get is absolutely good, just as good as what I was getting before. In some cases better. I remember putting it up against the Canon, one of my favorite lenses, putting them side by side and getting sharper images out of the Lumix stuff. Yes, you get lower resolution, but even now with the 5D, the GH5 from Lumix, you have a 21 megapixel sensor now, so you're back up there with the resolution.
This camera you shot this with, what megapixel was this?
16. That was 16. Your micro four thirds has been 16 megapixel for a really long time. And then with the GX8, Panasonic broke that barrier, went up to 20 megapixels, 20 and a half, something like that megapixels. And that's where we're at now with the GH5 as well. So you get that higher resolution.
Was this RAW or JPEG?
RAW, yeah, or RAW. But I always shoot RAW plus JPEG. I do both because I like the color that comes out of the camera in the JPEG. I like tweaking it. I play with the color settings. I get it just the way that I like. Because ideally, I don't want to have to mess with the picture. I'd rather be shooting than editing. So if I can get an image out of the camera that is exactly what I want, or really, really close to it, I'll just use the JPEG.
You're done at that point. Would you Lightroom user, Photoshop user, not an Aperture
Lightroom
user?
Sadly, no. Lightroom.
Okay. And last question then. Somebody walks into a scene like this. What's your one tip that would help somebody? Because this is a combination of environmental portraiture, photojournalism, travel photography. There's a lot of things involved in doing a shot like this,
sure.
Mentally, from your mental approach. So somebody is traveling and they walk into some scene like this, a cafe in Italy, whatever. What's your one main tip that would help somebody get better at this?
Shoot first, ask questions later.
Okay.
Because if we had no idea, I walk into this place and I have no idea what the guy's how he's going to react, right? And I see a scene. I want this scene, and I shoot it. Now, if the guy yells at me and he's really upset and he wants the picture gone, fine. I'll delete it. I got no qualms with that. It's not like we are in his business after all. It's not like we're out on the street at street photography, and I'm in a foreign country. I don't speak the language. I don't necessarily know what the rules are, but you take some risks and shoot first, ask questions later. I want to get that shot. If it pisses somebody off, I'll delete it. I'm not going to use a picture that somebody doesn't want me to use. In most cases, maybe not always, but if you're waiting, the moment's going to be gone. And if you say, oh, that thing that you were doing when I walked in, can you do that again? It's going to be different.
It's never the same.
It's never the same, ever.
Never the same. And you said you never saw this type of a scene again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
you can try to recreate it. And you know what? I might have been able to recreate it better, right? I may have been able to recreate, okay, you know what, we need more bread on there so we know what's happening. Let's get more uncooked bread out there. Let's make sure we can see some of the baked bread in the background. You know, this light, let's move this light, let's change that. Could you go a little bit different angle? And you know what, technically, I probably could have created a better shot had I taken the time to stage it. But it wouldn't be natural. It wouldn't be the real environment of what I walked into. But more importantly, it's not the way that I remember it that moment that I walked in the door. And that was the key.
And more importantly to me is the approach that you had when you first went on this workshop. And that was you had a story that you had to tell. And that was the story. And as soon as you made the story and got involved in it, it's not the story anymore.
Right.
So if people want to find out more about PhotoJoseph, where can they go?
All kinds of places, but the easiest is just to go to joseph.info. That has absolutely everything listed on it. That has my photography website, PhotoJoseph.com. It's got the PhotoApps.Expert site. It's got links to the PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment YouTube show, live daily YouTube show. Got links to my workshops. It's all there.
And on almost every social media, you are PhotoJoseph now. Also on Twitter, you have PhotoApps.Expert. At PhotoApps.Expert. For Linda, the easiest, I don't know if you have links on joseph.info to Linda, do you?
I do. Oh, yeah. That's on there as well.
Perfect.
But yeah,
or
if you're a Linda
just go to
subscriber,
lynda.com, just search for PhotoJoseph. You'll find
search PhotoJoseph and you'll find it. You'll find it for sure. And if you want to join me on a workshop, and Steve, you should come with me. We should go do this together. Come with me to Mexico. Come to Oaxaca. We're going back down in October. We did one earlier this year in January. It was the first of our workshops, and it's not just a photography workshop. It's a photography/cultural tourism workshop. My partner in this, Eric Mindling, has been running cultural tourism tours. Been doing cultural tourism in Oaxaca for 25 years. He's got a whole company down there. They do just all kinds of cultural tourism things. And we were talking once years ago and thought, wouldn't it be cool to combine our forces and make a photography workshop? And that's what we did. And January's was a beautiful, beautiful experience. If you go to photojoseph.com/workshops, you will see a video there of the workshop that we already did. And signups are now open for this workshop in October. And we'd love to have you guys come out.
You want a workshop would be awesome.
It's a lot of fun. We have a good time. It's not just about taking pictures.
Here's the main thing is, if you're looking for anything photographic oriented, most likely PhotoJoseph had a hand in it. It's either a YouTube video, it's a workshop, it's somewhere on his website, it's a podcast. He's pretty much everywhere. Just go Google PhotoJoseph. You're going to find a ton of stuff. Joseph, I really appreciate your coming on, man, because I know how busy you are making the stuff.
Yep. As soon as we're wrapped here, I got to get back to shooting my GH5 training, which, if you don't mind another plug in here, GH5training.com. So as I said, I'm a Lumix Luminaire. I'm sponsored by Panasonic. I'm creating an entire workshop around, entire video course around the GH5, learning how to get the most out of it. And we are about halfway through shooting that right now. It's already started in post-production. That will be available on lynda.com, and it's also available for download from gh5training.com.
And keep in mind that for the blog post on thisweekinphoto.com, you'll be able to find all of Joseph's links. I've got literally every link known to man in there having to do with PhotoJoseph. So just go to thisweekinphoto.com, find the Behind the Shot. You can also just go to behindtheshot.tv as a shortcut to get you there, and find this episode, and it'll get you everything that you need. So again, thank you to my guest this time around, PhotoJoseph. This is Behind the Shot, where we try and get inside the mind of great photographers by taking a closer look behind one of their shots. I'm your host, Steve Brazel. We'll talk to you next time.